Thank you. Welcome everyone to ACDE number 211. Lots of people added stuff on the agenda in the last few hours, so yeah, I just re-scrambled it together. But first off, we'll discuss Petra, which obviously went live on mainnet yesterday. Then a bunch of stuff related to Fusaka. There were also some spread about measuring state growth and getting better metrics for that. And then if we have time, I shared my thoughts yesterday around how we should potentially improve the Alcor Devs process. And someone else also had a post about building better tooling for that. And if we have time after all of that, there is also another EIP that someone wanted feedback on. But to start, yeah, Petra went live yesterday. Congratulations, everyone. It seems like the fork went smoothly and there weren't any major issues. This is huge. It was the biggest fork in terms of EIPs that we've shipped. I don't know if anyone has any like status update or yeah, observations they want to share about the fork, but yeah, from what I could tell, it went pretty cleanly. Okay, well, yes, guess we can leave it at that. Again, yeah, congrats everyone on getting this shipped. It was a lot of work, and yeah, it is live. Yes, on to the next one. And then if you're listening, you can try out all the new features like MaxCV 7702 and the BLS precompile on mainnet. I'll also give a shout out to the testing team for a new thing they did for this fork. So we obviously have all these execution spec tests. We tried to identify which subset we should actually run on mainnet, and then we ran like some of the actual spec tests on mainnet to test the EIPs in prod as well. Yeah, to sanity check that there were no issues on mainnet. So yeah, new thing we've done when testing this fork. And yes, we can also take a nap today if people feel like it. But yeah, okay, moving on to Fusaka. So like we discussed a few weeks ago, going forward, we want to kind of use Alcor Devs execution and CL calls to work on scoping and debating the next forks. And with Petra done, this means the Fusaka kind of implementation conversation should move to the ACDE calls that we have on the Mondays. And so going forward, especially for PeerDAS, we will be using those calls. So there's currently a PeerDAS breakout scheduled on Tuesdays. And I believe starting next week, it will move to the Monday call. Is that correct in terms of dates?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Because I just looked at the calendar, there's still the PeerDAS breakouts on the Tuesday in the calendar, so we should delete those. But yeah, Fusaka is now the next fork, and yeah, we can continue the conversation there in ACDT. On the EL side, so what we spoke about the last two calls was this idea that we wanted to focus on increasing the gas limit, and it's kind of a weird thing to put in a fork because the hard forks, or sorry, the gas limit is not set in consensus. It's set by the block proposers. We still wanted to have some sort of forcing function or reminder to prioritize this during the fork. And so we came up with this EIP to increase the defaults at the Fusaka fork. The idea being that we would effectively work on getting through the bottlenecks that prevent us from raising the gas limit, and then once we get to Fusaka and ready to deploy that, we would change the placeholder there for an actual number. So it's kind of a weird EIP because it just says like we should do stuff to increase the gas limit, but then the actual like semantic change is just a constant in the clients. But it does feel like the best way to encapsulate that we actually want to do this work. So I know I think this was either the last call or the call before that, we said we would SFI something like this. Yeah, wanted to give people like a last chance to comment. Yeah, Micah?
So I feel like the arguments against this differ greatly depending on what the increase is to. Like if the increase is to 36 million as a default, that's probably not really contentious. If the default is changing to like 100 million or 500 million or a billion, the arguments are very different. And so I'm curious how we should approach debating this.
I think the rough target is something in the 100-ish millions. And it's hard to know, but and the EIP has like a, 3-figure million placeholder. But yeah, and yeah, 150 is like a number we've used, but the idea is like maybe by the time Fusaka ships, we realize we can't actually run 150 in the clients comfortably, and maybe the clients are able to run at 95 million, and perhaps we want to recommend some value below that. So we might say okay, we're comfortable with 95, we'll set the default to 85 or something like that.
So I think my main concern after talking to people about this that I think I would like to see more work on is in all the discussions around the gas limit that's increased I've seen, the discussions focus around what a validator or a builder can handle. I see very little discussion around what an RPC provider can handle and what they should have to handle. The idea being the RPC providers right now are people like Infura and Alchemy, but ideally they would be end users running Ethereum on their local machine or at home. And these people are a very different demographic than the people who hold 32 ETH and have dedicated servers and operations budgets, etc. And so I would like to see, sometime before we make a decision, I'd like to see much more discussion on how a gas limit will impact these people. Something to keep in mind is that pure DAS and statelessness and history deletion don't help RPC providers at all. RPC providers already delete most of their history. They prune their state. They're running as slim as they can. And state growth is the only thing that increases their disk significantly. And these, again, just would like to see more discussion around them and less discussion around the people who have giant machines that are beefy and able to do lots of stuff.
Thanks. Ansgar?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think these concerns are very valid by Micah. I think it's good that they're being brought up. I think we should kind of have the clear separation though. For me, today is much more about deciding that directionally we want to basically keep pushing, keep exploring what the kind of safe throughput numbers are, and then what the bottlenecks are, and keep working on those. So it's really much more about agreeing on the direction and on the process, and then within that, I think this is exactly the type of question we should ask, right? Once we actually are serious about having that continuous loop, getting more sophisticated about what are the different node types that we aim for, what are the different bottlenecks we pay attention to. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I would separate that out, right? Today is much more about saying the direction is to try to scale.
Thanks. Francis?
Yeah, hi. I'm not sure if it's completely 100% exactly matching, but for example, for base, we're at 140 million gas per block right now at a 2-second block time, and RPCs are fine. So just a data point. That's obviously a little bit different on hardware spec and different stuff, but yeah, just a data point there.
Right, and I guess yeah, maybe Micah, to your RPC point is your concern if I'm running a node on my computer and I want to serve an RPC to others, or just to process my own transactions through my own RPC endpoint?
I think those are two different users. Both of them should be considered, certainly. For example, a RPC provider probably runs, by far the most CPU burn of anybody, because people are constantly doing ETH calls, and that includes also, doing lots of state lookups. Like someone like Infura, they have to have be able to deal with huge amounts of random access on their disks. Versus someone who's just running on their local computer, they're doing very little work. The actual work is very little, but they also don't have the benefit of having petabyte drives they can scale across. and
Right, that-
hardware.
yeah.
People that, right. So two different classes of users. I think both are important and both should be discussed.
Right, but I think, like, I guess to Francis' point, like, Infura will be fine. Like, they run other chains, they already, like, do that. And then the question of the, like, local user is more, what is like the performance degradation of their local RPC access with a larger state? Is probably the question to answer. But
I don't think so. I think the performance of a local machine, I don't think is going to be the bottleneck. I think the bottleneck is going to be the size of a hard drive your average user has. Like the average user, even a gaming rig, you get a 2 terabyte drive maybe, and it's 50% full of games. And so you've got, another 25% for your OS and your music and your videos, and you're down to like 512 gigabytes. And so the question is how fast is that going to fill up? And whereas someone like Infura, they probably don't care much about the disks at all. They care a lot about the CPU burn and the disk I/O.
Correct, but do you think that for home users, disk size is effectively the biggest constraint for state growth?
For the people I talk to who try to run Ethereum clients on their home machines, disk size is the number one bottleneck. These people usually have gaming rigs, so the processing power is not a problem. RAM's usually not a problem. It's always the disk. Like the disk is the thing that they just don't have, and they have to go out of their way to buy.
Okay, so I think this is a tractable thing. So I would separate those things though, and I don't think that we're like anywhere near the performance bottlenecks of Infura not being able to serve RPC access, but like yes, the disk size is a concern. I think Marius was next.
Yes, so I am kind of against this EIP because I think it would not be wise to push for a higher gas limit as long as we don't have the state growth solved. Right now, state is roughly growing by 5 gigabytes a month, and so going to 60 million gas will grow the state by 10 gigabytes a month, which is 120 gigabytes a year. Yes, there are other chains that are having a way larger state, but they also engineered their stuff in a way that they can handle it, and the way they engineer it is everything kind of becomes trusted. Like they're getting a lot of trusted. They're getting a trusted snapshot from some trusted party, and they're not verifying transactions anymore. They just apply the state updates, and so yeah, I think we should only really increase the gas limit once we have a way of or once we also decide to increase the cost of storing stuff, which in turn would make execution cheaper, and storing more expensive. Or we could introduce some new mechanism of state expiry or something, but we aren't really there yet, because the work around state expiry is not great. So the problem, so as Dom just mentioned in the chat, 120 gigabytes a year is not too bad, or it's not a problem. Yes, it's true, but size-wise, it's not a problem. The problem is that random accesses in this data will get much worse. So we kind of had some benchmarks recently that we're currently the way our database is architectured with Pebble. We kind of hit a wall at data set of like 500 gigabytes. So random accesses in a data set of 500 gigabytes is kind of where we kind of hit the wall where state access get extremely slow. So yeah.
Thanks. Let's do Dankrad and then Sophia.
Yeah, so I think on the RPC nodes, I think my opinion is that the reality is, like, I think it's just time to look at what's actually happening, and that is that the number of Ethereum users who run their own node and like use it directly through that is already extremely low. And like continuing to double down on a strategy that hasn't worked in the past is just, I think it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I think like our real strategy around like running your own node has to become like something around verifying a ZK chain and using some other way of like retrieving the state trustlessly for that. And I don't think we should continue optimizing, oh, users should run their own RPC nodes that keep the full state. So I think like it's just like, it just doesn't make sense to keep doubling down on something that hasn't worked. And we've already like now sufficiently increased like the cost of running nodes that I think like the number of users who like on the side run like a node without being very dedicated to it is already like dwindling.
Thanks. Let's do Sophia and then Ansgar again.
Yeah, I agree with Dankrad that we shouldn't optimize for a use case that essentially no one is doing for reasons that have nothing to do, I think, with hardware requirements. But mainly I wanted to say that I don't think that we need to block increasing the gas limit on concerns about state growth, because we do have time. For example, in Amsterdam, we could increase the cost of fresh storage rates. And we do have, I think, a credible medium-term stateless plan. Maybe not in time for the state reaching half a terabyte, which is, I think, is what Maria said. It slows down significantly, but I think we could have ZK clients on mainnet next year, and we could make them required probably a couple of years after that. So we do have a plan to deal with this. I think as long as it as the pace of state growth matches that timeline.
Right, and I guess one question I'd have, like following up on what Marius said here, is obviously random access on a larger state becomes more problematic. So yes, if we make like new state access extremely expensive, but then accessing the existing state constant and grow the state, is it a problem? Is like more access across a smaller state within a given block size as problematic? I don't know if anyone has an intuition for that. If not, this feels like something practical we should test. Like, yeah. Ansgar?
Yeah, then maybe on that point, just very briefly, like I think we, as we start scaling the gas limit, probably we should more regularly just do rebalancing of gas cost, right? Where basically like if we say we are comfortable that we have a lot of headroom in, I don't know, call data, or we have a lot of headroom in state access, but not state growth, right? Then we should just like be okay with, in a hard fork, literally just 5xing, 10xing the cost of state of one specific kind of type of usage, so that we can just scale everything else in the meantime. And then as we unblock these things, we can then later on make them cheaper again. And so like I think that should just be a continuous loop rerun on every hard fork. The kind of point there is just that these things, of course, then have a pretty long lead time, whereas like a lot of other things we can do, I don't know, changing the database or things like that. Of course, that also takes time, but we can do that whenever. Pricing, we can only change at the hard fork, and of course, that has to be locked in like many months in advance. So, for example, right now, it's probably already too late to do that for Fusaka, and we also don't yet know exactly what we would need to make more expensive, what the immediate bottleneck is. Unless, of course, if we today decide that we are especially worried about state growth, we could make that more expensive so that we can scale everything else. But it's just important to keep that in mind, that like on these things, we basically we should try to be as forward-looking as possible because hard forks have such a longer lead time than just client changes.
Right, and I guess this gets back to the original point of like, why do we want an EIP that says change the defaults in the hard fork? I think to me, this is kind of the main reason where there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. And if we don't have something in the hard fork that's saying we should work on all of the bottlenecks, then we will just do other things. I think we should also be fine with saying, like, if we have this EIP that says we increase the gas limit, and then we realize that increasing the cost of new state is the main bottleneck, we could add another EIP to the hard fork that does this, because it's like getting us towards that. But I don't think it's realistic to say in advance, like, oh, these are the 5 changes we're going to want to do that help us increase the gas limit. Like, if we, kind of like by definition, if we knew, we would have already done them. So like, yeah, the expectation would be that if we do have this EIP in the fork, there might be other EIPs around pricing or around, sorry, like other parts of the clients that we include through the like Fusaka development process that help raise the gas limit. And there was already one of those on the agenda, for example, capping the max block size, because there is a limit on the consensus layer. There's nothing really in terms of actual like storage or like bandwidth size on the EL, and so this is a thing we could do to like improve or I don't know, get us closer towards increasing the gas limit. But yeah, like we could like do this because we've said we want to increase the gas limit on L1 basically. Yeah, Ben.
Just to follow up on the block size limit on consensus layer. It's also a block size limit on ELs in their gossip protocol.
Right, correct. Can we come up with a way to vet that gas limit to state growth is linear proportional? It's reasonable, but it's an assumption. Actually, since 4.4.4, it's no longer proportional. I don't know if Storm is on the call. I think you're the one who's probably run the most analysis on this.
I have not actually investigated in detail whether it's linear, sublinear, superlinear. I would expect it to be a little bit sublinear, but not totally sure.
Okay. And yeah, maybe if you want to post your dashboards in the chat for people to review, but I think that's one of the few things that we have in terms of hard data on this.
So just to clarify, I think, excuse me, if maybe testing in our shadow forking technologies could be explored in such a way that we could compress actual mainnet traffic into larger blocks with larger limits, I think that might be a little bit less of an assumption as to how that relationship works. I don't know that that's a thing. I don't know that that's possible, but it might be neat to explore.
And so, yes, I guess maybe zooming out, like I think the meta point is there's a lot of work to do here to actually do this in a like intelligent way. There's a lot of different bottlenecks to consider. Doing all this work is like takes away from obviously working on other EIPs for a hard fork. And therefore, if we want to prioritize it, we should like be explicit about this. We can't say like, oh, we're just going to work on the gas limit on the side. Realistically, this means a year from now, we will not have done anything or that much. Yeah, Micah?
For generating test data, could we maybe look at one of these other chains that has a ridiculously high gas limit and look at the types of transactions that people do on there, just to get an idea of when gas prices are extremely low, presumably because gas limits are high, what are people using the chains for? Because the behavior patterns of usage may change significantly as the price declines. And so look at Solana, look at Base, and see, what are people doing on those blockchains? Is it storage heavy or is it compute heavy?
Yes, and I think the Get team has actually looked at Binance chain a bunch in the past, but yes, we should compare with other chains. And again, yeah, like there's a lot of stuff that we would need to look into to do this well. The question is, do we want to prioritize this over other things? And we should agree to that ideally today, because yeah, if we just say there's a bunch of other stuff we're going to work in Fusaka, we are not going to do all of this. Yeah.
On that, I think the thing that I think might be useful or important is figure out what we think the bottleneck is going to be. Like, what is the thing most likely to stop us from raising the gas limit?
Yes.
And focus the research on that. As I mentioned previously, I feel like all the research is focused on, validators and what they can handle. But if the bottleneck is RPC providers, then it doesn't matter how much you can crank it up for the validators, because your bottleneck's somewhere else. So deciding and agreeing on where that bottleneck is maybe is the first step to reducing the scope of work that we need to do to figure out, can we increase?
Yeah, I agree. We should basically figure out what all the bottlenecks are and then kind of go through them one by one as we raise the gas limit. Yeah. And that's kind of what the EIP says. And maybe another thing to surface as we discuss this, Dankrad, you had a different proposal that we should consider around, instead of saying like we're going to try our best and find a number, you were proposing we should actually set a schedule and then use that as a forcing function. Do you want to maybe give some context on this?
Yeah, I mean, I already wrote a little bit about the different factors motivating this on ETH magicians. I think for me, it's just there are two things coming together, right? Like one is, I think, if we do want to do this, like scale the L1, it only makes sense when there's actually some amount of reliability involved. Like we need to tell applications developers where it is going to be in a few years. Like if we just do this ad hoc, then maybe like they will decide now that, well, I mean, sure, they're going to do a one-time raise to 150 million, and then we're back to how it was before, and that's all done. So I think it's good to like be more ambitious and enshrine some goals. I said why I do think like something like 100x is achievable. It's like a very gradual exponential increase that's very manageable in the sense that like for the first 2 years to 10x, I think we are very confident that like all the problems are like at the very least known and can be relatively quickly implemented. And after that, it becomes maybe more speculative in terms of like how we can roll out ZK VMs. That we can also start. We will very likely start within this year and next year, so we will have plenty of data by then. But yeah, like to me, like it also involves a different kind of engineering. Like if you know you want to go to 100x, you make different decisions now than if you're like, oh yeah, like we make some small improvements now. So I think to me, it's just the better way in many ways to like try to commit to something more ambitious now. I don't think it's crazy. It's achievable, and then plan backwards from there for the next 4 years what research and implementation has to be done.
Okay, thanks. There are some comments in the chat about this. Yeah, anyone wants to share on the call?
I don't know. Both of these proposals to me feel like we're trying to everyone is trying to change something, or that everyone is trying to push for the L1 to increase the gas limit, but they don't know where to start. And so the way they think is, or the only way that they can think of, is to write an EIP. From my point of view, it's just way too early to write any EIP about this. We should do the work we're doing the work to figure out where the where the issues are, where the edge cases are, where the worst cases are, so that we can safely increase the gas limit. I'm not. It makes no sense to me that that people are writing EIPs, especially like people that are not really involved in actually the investigation in the software.
Okay, and so you think we should just not have an EIP and do the work, and that's it?
Yeah.
And I guess, and then do you think that there's like a resource allocation question around like, okay, so if we have no EIP for this, do we just say, you know, there's like nothing else or very little in Fusaka, and you know, we kind of all work on the gas limit on the side? This is the part that just feels very weird. Like if this is actually something we want to do seriously, we should make it clear to ourselves in the community, like this is the priority. EIPs are like the tool we have for that. If there's something else we can do, that's fine as well. But yeah, otherwise, like I guess the risk is just we say we're going to do that, and then other stuff just gets prioritized above it. Lukasz, maybe.
So yeah, this is an unusual EIP because it's not really technical, but it's a goal rather than improvement, right? So kind of way that doesn't specify how, but it specifies where we want to be. So it's different than the other EIPs. So in that way, it doesn't really fit to EIPs. But based on the, I think a bit of a joke in the chat, Tim, you said to treat it as a Jira ticket, then I'm fine with that. So I'm fine with having this first EIP as a signal to the community that we are working on that actively, and this is one of our priorities. As for Dankrad's second EIP, I'm more reluctant to include something like that because we don't know where we think the safe limit is, and I'm not convinced. Maybe we can achieve these goals, but maybe we'll find a roadblock during that. And what's the point? Maybe it's more than hype generation or like conviction that we can achieve it or not. But I'm always under promise over deliver than the other way around. So I don't feel comfortable to committing to something that I couldn't, with let's say minimal changes, run now on at least my code. And I don't think I'm confident in that we could run with such aggressive limits now. So I'm not convinced for that. That one. Like it can be like a goal, more even like a vague goal, but I wouldn't commit to it as a roadmap. Like that we are confident in achieving that in this time scale.
Got it. Thanks. And yeah, I just want to address something. Like this is a weird EIP, and Ansgar had a comment in the chat. Like, should we be okay having small repricing EIPs in Fusaka? To me, this is kind of the point of having this informational EIP. Like, yes, this informational EIP is kind of useless in a way. Like, it doesn't propose any changes except eventually agreeing to a default. But the idea should be that if we have this and then we work and prioritize improving the gas, and we realize that some repricing is the main bottleneck, we should be okay having your repricing that goes in 3 months in the Fusaka hard fork. I just don't think we can predict in advance today, like, oh, here are like the 7 things we need to actually do to increase the gas limit. And there's kind of a chicken and egg problem here where like, until we actually do the research and do the work and find what the bottlenecks are, we're not going to know what the repricings or other things we need to change are. So if we add this EIP in, we should be okay saying other EIPs, like, and specifically protocol changes related to it that help us unlock a higher gas limit, like may be added to Fusaka, even though we're like past the deadline. But yeah, because we don't know what those EIPs are, then we can't really add them today. And and maybe we can reflect this more explicitly in the text, but yeah, that would be like the thing we kind of commit to. Yo.
Yeah, so that's something that echoes a bit what Marius was saying. But this is the second time I hear people saying in this call that we'll have ZK VMs next year. No, that's not happening. None of that work to assess, like the work to assess whether or not those big claims are holding water have barely started, and there's a lot of fine print, coming with it. If what I mean is if your way out for passing your EIP is counting on ZK VMs being delivered next year, like we should not consider the EIP at all, because there's so much uncertainty about those things, when they will be available, if they're going to work at all. I mean, of course they're working, but if they're going to work for our specific use case, for me that's a big red flag.
Okay. Yeah, so anyone else have other thoughts on this? Otherwise, I think we should make a decision about, do we want to prioritize either of those things for Fusaka? And then there was a comment earlier in the chat about other CFI EIPs, which I think should also agree to today. But yeah, this one kind of feels like the most consequential. So yeah, I think we should make that call first. Okay, and Lucas shares like some context on how gas increase is being tested to be safe. Do you want to cover that? I know Nethermind has actually been doing some really cool work there. So
so I'm not the main person working on that, so I'm not sure if we have Camille, but I see Marcin in the chat. Maybe he wants to chime in.
Hi. What we can achieve here is like we have some test cases which can be optimized, or potentially we can do one or two repricings to achieve like everything on Ethereum being at least as fast as EC recover compile, and going above it would be more challenging, as like EC recover is a reference for many other opcodes and precompiles. So we can have some estimation how far we can go without like a big refactors in Ethereum by simply checking on some reference machine how EC recovery is performing on all execution clients. And then probably we need to optimize some things like client specific things and maybe some repricings, and we'll get there.
So maybe if I can chime in. So Nevermind team is like dedicated to ensuring that gas limit increases are safe. So for example, we are especially testing like edge cases for that. That if you fill the block with different edge cases, you still have reasonable block time on, and we are testing it on all clients. And we have tooling for that. We build it over the years, and we'll be continuing on that. So what we want to do is kind of, at least from the execution standpoint, we can discuss about the state growth and different things are another angle, right? Or SnapSync and JSON RPC. Though I think JSON RPC, to be honest, currently at the least of our problems because it's horizontally scalable. But okay, but at least from the execution standpoint, the core protocol that yeah, that's the main thing. And up to some point, we think probably it will be relatively easy to scale, and then we probably hit some precompiles that could potentially be used to attack Ethereum and causing potential issues if you fill block with those precompiled calls. But then we might, at this point, suggest some repricing if we want to go above some gas limit for those precompiles. So that's it. So we will be trying to guard a lot of those edge cases and advise on where are the safe limits here and there.
Thanks. And then, yeah, there's a good comment from Justin in the chat as well that like we should also solicit like input from the community in terms of tests and things that they want, yeah, to make sure we validate against, which I expect we should be able to do through this. Ben?
Yeah, and I'm sympathetic to this gas defaults EIP as going from what you've recently written as the defining feature of the Fusaka fork on the EL side. Even though it's more like a visionary EIP than a concrete implementation. It gives us a goal, whereas otherwise we don't have anything written down as this is what we're targeting.
Right. And yeah, again, I realize it is like a weird EIP, but I think the thing that's come out of this conversation so far is just the amount of work that it will require to do this well. And so, yeah, we should ideally prioritize it. I feel like we've kind of covered all angles of this. So at this point, it probably makes sense to just like hear from client teams, like, do you think we should SFI either of the two gas limit EIPs? And then if there's other things in the CFI list that people feel more strongly about, yeah, we can also discuss those, but ideally making a decision around the gas limit being the priority today would be good.
I think that kind of misrepresents the debate. Like we're not really making a decision about whether the gas limit is a priority right now. We're making a decision whether this specific EIP should be SFI'd. I think we should make gas limit increases a priority. I still don't think we need an EIP for that. But I personally, not speaking for the gas team, I personally would be, yeah, neither against nor for SFIing this EIP.
Okay.
The one thing that I want to stress though is like, if we SFI this EIP, it doesn't mean that we will increase the gas limit by the Fusaka fork. If this work turns out to need bigger refactors, bigger repricings that we cannot move into the Fusaka fork and we have to ship in Amsterdam, then I would be against raising the gas limit for Fusaka.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would personally consider that like, you know, not ideal, but I think we should not delay PeerDAS on this. And so if it turns out that there's literally zero improvements we can do after spending months on it that can ship by Fusaka, we should not raise it. But yeah, ideally we are able to find something. Yeah.
Yeah, so for Fusaka, we already proposed the repricing of ModExp precompile. And right now, like edge cases of ModExp precompile are like the biggest bottleneck, and it's like twice slower than the next one. So having ModExp repricing in Fusaka will unblock potential gas limit increases a lot. and all the others can be shipped later if we find something else.
Andrew?
Yeah, so I think we should SFI the gas limit increase EIP to just signal to the community that we are working on it, and it's in focus for Fusaka. And I would for Fusaka I would CFI the less ambitious 17935, because the exponential one we can consider SFIing it for later hard forks, and this one is just very kind of vague. It's just basically says the limit to XX0M, right? And basically that XX can stay 36 if like Marius' concerns are valid, and we find out that basically we cannot do anything material in the Fusaka timeframe. But I think it does send a signal that it is an important focus for us.
Thanks. Yeah, Justin?
Sort of agree here. I do definitely prefer 7935 over the exponential one. I would like to see the backwards compatibility section of that EIP fleshed out, and to include a little bit more rigor on what exactly we test for with regard to determining its safety. Bonus points for making that a reusable suite of tools that the community can go over, vet, contribute to. And I think eventually I'd love to get us to a world where we're either committed to networks and community operators really having more control over the gas limit safely. Right now, it's an ambiguous thing where we say, yeah, anybody can adjust it, but nobody really should until we have determined that it's safe. So we are in kind of a split brain mode here, and I'd also like to see that resolved. I don't know if that's realistic to be in scope for this EIP, but I think it's doable. So that's a long way of me saying I think the debate around gas limit needs to be reframed, and we need to decide one way or another who's making that call.
Right, and I think, yes, my biggest concern about the gas limit today is our approach to raising it is we do absolutely nothing, and then there's enough noise on Twitter that we realize like, oh, we should actually look into this, and then we kind of scramble together to like do a bunch of analysis last minute. It would be a much healthier place if we always had a sense of like, these are all the bottlenecks, this is where we're working on, these are what we hope to unlock, and we can kind of suggest a gas limit.
Yeah, and I'd like to see a world where the community comes to us with that, with a lot of data and not just complaints. And I think that's doable.
Yes. Anyone from Reth on the call? Okay, so I guess if I have to recap now, it seems like Marius from Geth is likely against, but not too strongly opinionated. Nethermind, Aragon, Besu seem on board with the first EIP, so 7935, that has this vague goal. Any other client teams have thoughts or perspectives on this? I guess I would lean, like we have discussed this for the past, I think, 3 calls at this point. Like I would lean towards SFIing the info EIP. This is again like a weird thing. So I think going with the less the like more underspecified one for now is probably better than trying to commit to the more ambitious one proposed by Dankrad right out the box. Yeah, if someone from Reth could +1 or raise an objection, that'd be good. Okay, Roman said in the chat they're supportive of including it. So, okay, let's move forward then with 7935. Yeah, for Fusaka, and again, this implies that there probably will be other EIPs that get added as we identify some bottlenecks. And then on that front, actually, there was already a first one for people to review. I don't think we should add any more about the gas limit today, but at least people should be aware of this one. 7934 by Julio, Ben, and Storm. Do either of you want to give a quick overview of the EIP?
I can, depending if Julia's on the call.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so in the CL, there is a limit on the gossip of 10 megabytes. Also in the EL, gossip is a 10 megabyte limit. So this is saying that blocks, to recognize that and say that blocks cannot be larger than 10 megabytes minus like a safety margin for the CL wrapper. Otherwise, if blocks are larger than that, they can't be propagated. So, in actuality, they can't be larger than that. Whereas if we commit to this, then we don't have to worry about what happens with call data getting too large or anything. The blocks just will be invalid if they're too large. So it's just recognizing that. As a side effect, this is a question. We can actually control the bandwidth requirements if it was set lower. But that's an aside.
And then the question, yes, is this for Fusaka? Yes, potentially. So the idea is like this could be one of the things we include related to the gas limit. Micah?
Am I correct in understanding that this is basically just being explicit about a requirement that we already have today?
Yeah, that's correct. But if blocks were larger than 10 megabytes uncompressed, it would just fail. But it's just saying if you try and build a block larger than that, mark it as invalid.
Currently, all clients have this problem, so it would be a consensus. They would be in consensus if you somehow managed to get a 10 megabyte block in today, or would some of the clients succeed, some not, and they'd fall out of consensus?
It's specified in both the PTP and the consensus spec to drop any peers that try and send you a block that big. Well, a message that big.
Wait, so you're saying that it's a propagation protection? Like it's being protected from Micah's concern at propagation time?
Yeah, so it's enforced at the network layer. If you send a message that when it decompresses is larger than 10 megabytes, you will be dropped as a peer. So therefore, we cannot create blocks larger than 10 megabytes and have them part of consensus. So it's just recognizing that and saying, well, if you try and build a block larger than that, it's an invalid block.
Ahmad?
Just to make things clear, like the propagation protection is already in. Like currently CLs and ELs do not propagate any blocks bigger than this. But previously we used to not have blocks bigger than this limit because the gas limit is limited. Now, if we want to increase the gas limit, then we will hit that wall if we don't put another condition on built blocks that they should not exceed this specific size when built. So this just adds as I said, a condition or like a constraint on the builder to build the block not bigger than this. So when it finds that there is some transactions that have some really large amount of call data, for example, it might drop these in favor of smaller, more paying transactions just so that it does not exceed the block size that is the constraint. The constraint, yes, is already exists, but this makes it explicit for the builder to say, hey, like if your block is bigger than this, it won't be accepted, it won't be part of consensus.
Yeah, rather than, I mean, potentially have a weird error condition. So if somebody has a bug in peering and they don't actually reject it, then we'd have a problem.
Yeah, previously we had like tested something with Sepolia, I think, where some clients had limits configured different than other clients. So some blocks became canonical for some clients, and other clients didn't even see those blocks because of the propagation protection or something like that. My memory is fuzzy on this, so if someone who knows maybe can yeah.
Okay, and yeah, I think even though this seems promising, we should give people a couple weeks to review it before we actually include it in, say, like the first Fusaka DevNet. But should we consider effectively like CFIing it for Fusaka, and then yeah,
I
potentially.
mean, a follow-up clarity on this is you can only achieve blocks this size by sending, say we're 110 mega gas blocks. You can only achieve a block this size by sending a single transaction that fills the block within zeros. So it's not like a productive block. It's just like an attack block. So it's saying, well, let's not allow them to exist.
Got it. Anyone else have thoughts on the EIP?
Seems like a good one, and we should include it, especially given that we want to increase the gas limit.
Okay, so it seems like there's some desire to include it by many of the team. So I would push for us to CFI it, still have some time to review before we decide whether we want it in the first DevNet. So that's 7938. And then the other thing, so for Fusaka, we have all these CFI'd EIPs I posted in the chat. We should determine what we want to move to our first Fusaka DevNet, so what we want to actually SFI. I think a light client had EIP 7907 in the chat as one that he wanted. But yeah, curious to hear from client teams, like what do we think should be SFI'd for the first Fusaka DevNet? So yes, pure DAS is already SFI'd. Do we want anything else? Because I believe we do have pure DAS DevNets. So if we don't feel okay, ModExp repricing. Yeah, I guess Maris, do you want to make the case for ModExp repricing here?
No, I think Nethermind should make the case for it because it's their EIP.
Okay, so and this is a 7883, right? Yeah, okay, it seems like Besu is up.
Yeah, the ModExp's because ModExp's pricing is degenerate. It's not correctly priced compared to any other operation. So you can create very bad blocks. Lucas?
Yeah, exactly. ModExp has edge cases that could allow for fairly long processing time. With 36 million limit, we are still, let's say, in fine window here. But if we go not like to 60 or 100, etc., it will probably could be seen as a worst case scenario. Could be too bad with the current pricing.
Yes, it's a biggest blocker with a big margin for potential increases in gas limit.
And we do have some test cases that we were sharing in the past. I think we can share them again, but I will leave that to Marcin with other core devs.
Okay, thanks. So it seems like 7823 is pretty unanimously okay, there's actually two ModExp EIPs, so I want to make sure which one I'm talking about. Is this 7823 the set upper bounds or 7883 the gas cost increase, or both?
So we are mostly focusing on 7883, but I think both can be viewed as making contribution to the goal.
Yes, 7883 are repricing like the slowest scenarios, worst case scenarios, and the other one is setting the like upper bound for size of call to ModExp, and it's limiting such a big cases that were never happen on mainnet. Like the biggest size of any parameter was 513, and it's setting upper bound on 1024. So it's just eliminating potential future cases which never happen.
I think there's been potential consensus issues with they're all in their like larger areas as well, so it sort of limits the scope.
Okay, and Mario raised in the chat as well that none of the EIPs have proper tests for them yet, and ideally they should before SFI'd. So I think whatever we SFI, we should also be okay, or have someone who's like willing to write the test and help move that forward in the next couple of weeks. So if we move forward with the two ModExp EIPs, is there anyone who can commit to actually helping with the testing support for those? Yeah, Mario?
Yeah, it wasn't meant like to be like a blocker bridge, just a reminder of the process that we said we want tests before SFI. And it's not a problem. We can start the effort on it. And we can update maybe on the following couple of weeks. The reason there's no tests right now is because of the switch of the EOF, no AOF effort. So yeah, but basically we can implement them. Just it's gonna take a couple of weeks, maybe.
Okay. And Lucas, you say there's
well, I'm not sure if they are implemented, but there are like test cases with the previous price and new price in the EIP 7883 EIP. So just changing a price and it's easy to get a test. But we have like test cases in mind at least.
Yes, so we had some potential vectors from the last ModExp repricing. So it was too far last time when this equation was changed, and I added 9 test cases which are slow too, and I already shared it on many groups. So if anyone is interested, I can just share this file again. It's like the test cases from the last repricing plus new cases.
Okay, so I guess if we were to move with these two forward for Fusaka DevNet 1, do we feel confident like we would be able to get sufficient test coverage quickly enough? And
I think a same thing to do would be which ones of these represent the highest priority. And then we can focus on testing those and then CFI in those. Or
okay, SFIing those. Okay,
yeah.
and I guess, yeah, Matt has a point like saying like we should maybe just agree on what we want the SFI here and then make a final call in 2 weeks, have the first DevNet with just pure DAS. I guess my question there would be like, don't we already have pure DAS DevNets? And it's fine if we want to just have that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what is the state of the pure DOS DevNets for people? Is it rebased on master?
I think every single client is still in their custom branches. It's still highly work in progress.
Okay, so we could, I think it's also reasonable to say Fusaka DevNet 1 is just pure DAS, and then what we would want to aim for by next ACDE is the list of EIPs we want to SFI and include in the first DevNet, and then try to get tests written for them in that period. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to de-risk spending a week or two writing tests for something that clients aren't going to SFI. Yeah. Like, it's one thing to write the test and find that there are things that we didn't anticipate, and that's a reason why it doesn't get SFI'd or it doesn't go on a DevNet. But like for 7907, like I can work on the tests. I just don't want to spend a week doing this and then a client saying, yeah, well, we didn't want to do this anyways. So that's just a waste of everyone's time.
Agreed. So, okay, so can we get maybe like a, I don't know, check from the clients of today, like what they would want to move forward in a DevNet? So Nethermind posted their list in the chat. It was 7212, 7283, 7883, and then I think one of 7917 and 7918. Or sorry, no, both 7917 and 7918. And then, yeah, like client 7212, the two ModExps, and 7907. Justin, I mean, I'm reading what's written in the chat.
Right, but amongst which teams? I'm seeing a combination of EIPs from both Nethermind and Gath, and I'm not sure what overlaps and is. Okay, and that's all right. That's a personal list. Got it. So, like, what?
Okay, so I guess if teams haven't had time to review this, which seems to be the case, what is like the timeline on which we want to make this decision? Like, if we wait, do we want to wait the whole 2-week cycle to review the current CFI EIPs and then make decisions? Do we want to just decide this next Monday? Is that enough time for people? I think it's hard to do async because like it's usually a bit more subtle than just team A wants these EIPs and then team B wants these EIPs and you just get like the intersection. But I think if yeah, by Monday, the different teams could agree to which of the CFI'd EIPs we should prioritize for Fusaka DevNet 2. That would be ideal. We can have Fusaka DevNet 1 be just pure DAS. And yeah, I can make sure to update the list today, but basically the only addition we'd have in the list to what is already there is 7938, this one about the 10 meg max block size. Yeah, I think it's reasonable to just wait until Monday if people haven't had time to properly review this. And then once we know that on Monday, or I guess once we decide that on Monday, we should take like the testing, like the cost of testing into consideration as well. So we should just like SFI the things we think we can reasonably test by the DevNet after the pure DAS only DevNet. Does that make sense? Oh, yeah, sorry, I don't know why I said 7938. Yeah, 7934 is the one I meant with regards to the cap on the block size. Yeah.
I mean, is there a reason that we can't just kind of decide what we want to target for the next, for the testing now?
People seem
Like,
very uncertain.
I mean, these EIPs have been CFI'd for a month.
A month leading up to Petra.
Yeah, there's been a lot to do. I do think it'll be like, I don't think that we lose much by taking a couple days to have teams properly review this. And then Mario also says that by tomorrow they could share an overview of like what they expect the testing to be. And yeah, I don't know if people want to make the call for just ModExp. Like that one feels like the one that has the most consensus around. So we could say that DevNet 1 is just pure DAS and these two ModExp EIPs. I guess, yeah, maybe is there a preference towards? So I guess, Daniel, like, why would we CFI something, not consider it to SFI? We need to cap how much stuff we put in the next DevNet. So like, we should not realistically end up doing everything that's CFI'd. So we need to figure out like which of these are the highest priority and which ones do we want to move forward with now. It's much harder to like implement 10 different things in parallel than it is to say, like, here are the two things we're working on right now. So that's what we're trying to get at.
Just maybe one thing. I'm not really sure if the original goal to ship PeerDAS as soon as possible, you know, it really fits if now we consider, I don't know, to add a lot of other EIPs or even to add any other EIPs. So I'm not sure where people feel comfortable that they say this does not delay PeerDAS, because I think every single EIP potentially delays PeerDAS that we had.
I don't know that this is true because we have a lot of work on the CL side for PureDAS, and say something like repricing ModExp is pretty straightforward. So like, I don't expect that repricing ModExp would be the thing that delays PureDAS, and there's probably a bunch of others like that. But I do think we need to like incrementally add them to the DevNets, because if we just add everything at once, then it becomes much harder to test. Yeah, Marcin?
Yes, I agree with Tim. ModEx at least 7883. It's like a three lines to be changed in client implementations. And if we don't do it, we will like block gas limit increases until the next hard fork. So we just need to do it in the next one to unblock gas limit increases.
And yeah, just I think we want to also maybe like think of scope sizing there. Like, we don't necessarily want to blindly, if everything in CFI had tests tomorrow, I don't know that we would add them all into the second DevNet. So we should balance like, okay, what's the amount of things we want to realistically implement in the new DevNet, which ones are the highest priority, and kind of iteratively go from there. I do think, like, I don't know, based on this conversation, like, it feels like there's a lot of uncertainty, not a huge rush to make this decision. So I think it's worth waiting until Monday. It would be really helpful if, like, yeah, there is a doc from the testing team that kind of evaluates what's like the expected testing burden of these different EIPs. We can use that in the decision. And I think on Monday we can also make the call around whether we actually want the ModExp EIPs in the first pure DAS DevNet or not. Yeah. And yes, okay, to Ansgar's point, like, yes, we're talking about the ordering of when we bring them in. And I do think this is important because if we bring everything at once, then it all gets coupled and it becomes much messier to remove and undo. So we should be like judicious in what we choose to bring and when. And then it's possible that we don't get through the entire list because there's just other stuff, or because we're ready to ship pure DAS, or because something a little more complex than we expected. Okay, so yeah, to recap, I think let's make this call on Monday. So client teams should review what's in the CFI list, including this new one, 7934, about the limit on the block size. And then we can decide what we actually want in DevNet 1 along with pure DAS, if anything, and if we want to wait beyond that, or if we want DevNet 1 to just be pure DAS, that's fine too. But we can still prioritize the ordering. Yeah. And I think, anyways, I think what I could also do on Monday is right now the list is sorted by EIP number, but we could also just like sort it by priority or something at some point so that it's a bit clearer going forward, like what's the order in which we pick from to include stuff. Yeah, this is, okay, to make it even more concrete, I think this is probably like the most helpful thing is like getting an ordered list from every client team of the stuff in CFI and in what order would you prioritize pulling it into Fusaka is probably the most helpful data point. And we can use that to make our decisions. And then, yes, we can kind of merge these ordered lists on Monday and determine which subset we want to include right now. Does that make sense? Sorry, I know this was confusing, but I think we have a clear next step. Okay, perfect. So like, yes, again, the list that's there plus 7934 is what we are trying to sort before Monday. Okay, so I think this covers the Fusaka stuff. There was, so Greg had a comment following the EOF removal around whether we would ever get the removal of dynamic jumps in the EVM. We only have 10 minutes here. I don't think it's like the right time to make a decision on this, but I don't know what is the right forum that people feel we should use to discuss this and what the path forward for the EVM should be. Does anyone have a suggestion here? Or
it's just important because we've been at it for 10 years. And it is the key to unlock almost any progress in any area of the VM.
Maris?
Yes. So I think we should do this on ACDE, especially when once we're moving to this new model of discussing like higher level ideas on ACDE. ACDE, and then discussing the more current stuff on ACDT. So I think this would be the right venue for it. I can also give my opinion on it. Right now, I don't see removal of static jumps a priority. I don't see the use cases that it unlocks. I know there are some, but I don't see this as a priority over other things that we could prioritize.
Every formal analyst and auditor I have talked to for 10 years have told me, please get rid of this. It is in the way, totally in the way. All of the research I want to do, I cannot do because it's in the way.
Right, but okay. Just to like be mindful of
the goddamn thing is broken.
Sure, but there are many things that are broken with Ethereum. There's a lot of things we need to do. So I guess Tamaris's point is like, yes, it's like a relative prioritization thing. If we had infinite resources in infinite time, we would do all the things.
If we're not going to fucking do this, I will go away and quit bothering you.
Like, I guess I do think the way to address this would be either, yes, there needs to be like a longer term effort around the EVM, or if there's a specific proposal for the next fork, like we should consider it and, you know, weight it against the different like relative prioritizations. But yeah.
So from my point of view, we have considered it many times. I have considered it many times myself. I don't think Ethereum is broken. Yes, as Tim said, I would like to have this. I think it's a nice feature to have only static jumps. I see the problem with the dynamic jumps. I dislike the jump test analysis and all of this, but I don't see this as a priority over other features.
The main thing is a forum, because we won't resolve it now.
Yeah.
But
so I guess, and yeah, this is like skipping ahead a bit, but
a forum and a commitment to either do this or not. Because if we're not going to do it, literally, I should go away. I'm wasting my time.
Right. Okay. So this is skipping ahead a bit, but yes, I think it's fair that like, yeah, we try to give commitments. There's two challenges there. One is I don't think all core devs can actually commit to anything beyond like the next fork in the future. We've tried this in the past and it's horrible because we then have priority shift, and the people who thought they had their thing committed to are even more disappointed than if we had not made any commitments at all. That said, a lot of the stuff that we need to do takes more than one hard fork to develop and implement and whatnot. We have had a bunch of working groups and breakouts to do this. And we, I think the mistake we've made there is that we haven't had like a way for these breakouts to like, I don't know, check in with all core devs about, is their thing still a priority and should they keep investing time on it? This is something I would like us to start doing. And ideally we can catch things, you know, that become less of a priority earlier in the process. But yes, like I don't think we can give you an assurance like this will never happen. All core devs can give you an assurance like whether or not this will happen in the next fork. If we want to start an EVM working group, I think we should be better at every fork, at least looking at every existing working group and assessing like, does this thing still make sense or not? But yeah, I just don't think it's possible to give you a commitment that's like better or stronger than that. And then, you know, based on that, obviously you should make a call of whether it's worth it to invest your time on these efforts. But I'm very weary of just giving people the impression of certainty when there isn't.
We just took years of work by a lot of people and shit canned it at the last minute. Why should people put in this kind of work?
Correct. And look, I mean, I think the signal like Marius shared and is that like, yeah, right now this is not a priority. I think the signal from EOF was like, this is also not a priority now. Again, like no one can stop you from putting in the work, but I think if you want like an explicit like thumbs up from all core devs, the best we can do is whether we want to consider this in the next hard fork. And you know, you're free to make a proposal for that.
Is done.
But yeah,
the work is ready to go in.
Yeah. So okay. So then when we start planning Amsterdam, then I think we should have a Amsterdam proposal about this. But yeah, we only have 3 minutes, so I do want to move us forward. But to answer your original question, I think either we should start a working group around the EVM, and if it's already done, then I think we should have a standardized process to consider different things for hard forks, and this can be one of them. But yeah, I do want to make sure we cover, there was a point around state growth metrics. So I forget who put this on the agenda, but it's one of the important topics we discussed earlier. CPRES. Yeah.
So together with Nethermind and following what they did with PerfNet and seeing that there's great initiatives to bump up the gas limits, one of the things that we wanted to make sure is that we can at least know which will be the consequences on state growth. Maybe not for the short term, but certainly for the medium term. So in regards of that, the idea was to start creating some kind of testnet where we can actually have gas limits from, I don't know, between 60 million and 300 million gas per block, and just bloat the testnet as much as possible and see what breaks and what useful data can we get. So in regards to the second one, I wanted to make some kind of call to participation or whatever, because there's a bunch of data that you can just retrieve from traces and blocks, but there's a lot of other data that is just ephemeral. So I don't know, RAM metrics, cache misses or stuff like that, which if you don't get it at the time, we will never get that information. So I wanted to share the two links and invite everyone to collaborate or give any initiatives or any data points that they would be interested in having, because we're doing this for sure with the collaboration of Nethermind and EIPs, and it will be really nice if we can get worst test cases, things that people want to tamper with, like mess up with caches and see how this affects the performance on I/O, especially on reads and this kind of stuff, especially when we have terabytes of state, which is the goal here. So yeah, just wanted to briefly mention it and ask anyone to help and collaborate if they want.
Thank you. Where's the best place for people to follow up?
So at this time, I would say the gas limit testing Discord channel is the place. Probably we will be creating something new or separate so that we don't blow out the channel for things that are not completely related. But this should be the first place. And aside from that, you can just DM probably Camille or anyone in Stateless Consensus, and we will be happy to help.
Awesome, thanks. And okay, we're at time, and there was a bunch more announcements, so I'll just like run through them, and people can review those async. But basically, I wrote a post published yesterday on like what I think the next step should be to implement kind of the process we discussed for all core devs. We briefly discussed it already. Someone also wrote a post about building some tooling for this. So it would be good to review those before the next ACDE so we can have like an informed conversation about it. There was also an EIP where the author was asking for some feedback from guests, I believe, in the agenda. So I'll post it here. And then aside from this, there's three more things. Ansgar, do you want to give a quick shout out to the research call? And then Trent, Petra pages. And if anyone can give a history expiry update, we can wrap up with that.
Yeah, sure, thanks. There's the second installment of the research calls that we just recently started that will be next Wednesday at 8:00. And this time the topic will be especially relevant for people here because it will be about the short-term EL scaling features. So not just the gas scaling, but like the actual features that would improve that, with the focus on the Glamsadam feature set, but also a little bit beyond that. We're still assembling the agenda. Once that I have that, I'll put that into the ACDE channel as well for people. And I'll also reach out to some of you all to ask if maybe you'd be available for like a 5-minute presentation on specific subtopics. So yeah, seeing many of you all there next week would be really good.
Thank you. To Trent?
Sure. I've DM'd, I think, most of the people on this call with a final reminder for submissions, but Petra Pages is a individual perspective on the last network upgrade to complement the team perspective. So we've got about 40 responses right now, but there's 80 people on this call and a couple hundred people that were involved in Petra in some ways. And we'd love to feature what you think about it, any nasty bugs you uncovered, something you're particularly proud of, or like a way for you to shout out people you thought went above and beyond. So check your DM or just reach out to me directly if I miss you in my reach out this week. Or Nixo may have DM'd you. So we're planning to publish early next week. So this is the final call for submissions. So if you're interested, please do reach out and fill it out. It's only about 10, 15 minutes to do. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone on the history expiry side? Okay, and then, yeah, I'll reiterate the last action item. So before ACDT on Monday, client teams just look at the CFI list, try to sort it by priority. And yeah, we're already over time. We should discuss history expiry as well, but I don't think this call is the right, yeah, the right time to do it. Yeah, thanks everyone. And again, congrats on shipping Petra. Yeah, it's live, it's still working. No one's paid me during this call to tell me there was a consensus bug. So yeah, great work everyone, and talk to you all soon.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.